Most dog owners I know would do anything for their dog. Anything. They'd skip a vacation, cut their own grocery budget, drive 2 hours to a specialist in the middle of the night, and yet every single morning they pour something into that bowl that's been quietly doing damage for years. Not because they're bad owners, because they trusted the bag. I trusted the bag too, for longer than I should have. 38 years of veterinary practice in rural Indiana. Thousands of dogs came through that door. And I can tell you, with the kind of certainty that only comes from watching too many animals die too young, that the number one thing shortening your dog's life is not cancer, not accidents, not old age. It's what you're feeding him every day in that bowl with the best intentions in the world. Today, I'm going to give you a recipe. $4. Ingredients from a regular grocery store. The same recipe I started using on my own dogs in the late 80s after I read something in the Journal of the American Veterinary Medical Association that genuinely changed how I practice medicine. A recipe that, when I started telling clients about it quietly, not on a pamphlet, not in the official discharge notes, just me leaning over the counter and speaking plainly, I watched dogs transform. Coat changes, energy changes, allergy symptoms that have been treated with pills for years, gone within 6 weeks. Before I give you that recipe, you need to understand what you're replacing. Because if you don't understand what's in that bag, you'll think I'm exaggerating. And I am not exaggerating. Not even a little. Let's start with what the pet food industry calls a protein source. On the label, you'll see things like chicken meal or poultry byproduct meal. That phrase, byproduct meal, has a legal definition from the Association of American Feed Control Officials. It means the parts of the bird that are not skeletal muscle: feet, intestines, undeveloped eggs, lungs, spleens, heads. Now, I'm not telling you those parts are completely without nutritional value. I'm telling you they are the cheapest parts. They are processed under heat so extreme that most of the nutritional structure is destroyed. And then they are sprayed with rendered fat to make the kibble smell appealing enough that your dog will actually eat it. That fat coating is also where mycotoxins concentrate. Mycotoxins are mold-derived toxins, and I want you to hear that translation clearly. They are poisons produced by fungal growth on corn, wheat, and soy, which are the base grains in almost every major kibble brand on the market. An FDA survey of commercial pet foods found mycotoxin contamination in samples from multiple major manufacturers. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's a published federal document you can look up right now. Purina Pro Plan, Hill's Science Diet, Royal Canin, Blue Buffalo. I'm naming them because they deserve to be named. These are the 4 brands your vet probably has stacked behind the front desk. There's a reason for that. And the reason is not that they're the best food available. The reason is that Hill's, for example, has a program that provides free food to veterinary schools. When a veterinary student spends 4 years of training eating lunch next to a display of Hill's Science Diet, that becomes the default recommendation. I know because I went through a version of that training myself. I know because I eventually looked at what I'd been recommending and felt something close to shame. Now, if you've ever lost a dog to kidney disease, liver failure, or cancer before that dog should have been anywhere near the end of his life, I want you to stay with me. What I'm about to say next is the part that matters most. The Clean Label Project, an independent nonprofit not affiliated with any pet food company, tested over 900 pet food products and found that some of the most heavily marketed premium price brands contain the highest levels of heavy metals and industrial contaminants: arsenic, lead, cadmium. The brands with the nicest packaging and the words natural and holistic on the front, not the cheap store brand. The premium one, the one you switch to because you were trying to do better. 1 in 4 dogs in the United States will develop cancer. That's the AVMA's own number, 1 in 4. In the 1970s, that number was closer to 1 in 10. The dog genome hasn't changed. What changed is what we started feeding them at scale in the 1980s and 1990s, when kibble became industrialized and corn syrup derivatives, artificial preservatives like BHA and BHT, and rendered animal fats became the foundation of the American dog's daily diet. I had a Labrador come in sometime around 2001, 7 years old, which for a lab is the prime of life. The owners were feeding him one of the leading large breed formulas, the kind specifically marketed for active dogs. That dog had a coat like dry straw. His joints ached to the point where he'd stopped wanting to go on the walks that had defined his entire personality. The owners thought it was just aging. I knew that dog. I'd seen him in here since he was a puppy, bouncing off the walls. 7 years old is not when a lab stops wanting to walk. I asked what they were feeding him. They pulled out their phone and showed me the bag. I recognized it immediately: high corn content, chicken byproduct meal as a second ingredient, synthetic vitamin pack, BHA as a preservative. I told them to stop. Just stop that day. I wrote down what I'm about to tell you, handed it to them on a piece of notepaper, and I said, give it 6 weeks before you judge it. They called me at 8 weeks. That dog was running again. Here is the recipe. And I want you to understand, I'm not claiming this is the only way to feed a dog well. I'm claiming it is dramatically better than what's in that bag. It costs roughly $4 per day for a medium-sized dog, and it uses ingredients your body can recognize because they are actual food. The base is cooked ground turkey or chicken thigh meat, not breast, because the fat in thigh meat carries fat-soluble vitamins and keeps the coat from drying out. You're looking at roughly 60% of the total volume. Brown it through, drain the excess fat, let it cool. The second component is cooked sweet potato or regular white rice, your choice depending on what your dog tolerates, at about 20% of the volume. Sweet potato is the better option if your dog has any kind of chronic inflammation or skin issues because of its beta carotene content and its lower glycemic load compared to white rice. But white rice is gentler on a stomach that's been on kibble for years and is making the transition. Start with rice if your dog is older or has a sensitive stomach. The third component is what I call the green fraction. Cooked green beans, cooked peas, or steamed broccoli, roughly 15%. These provide fiber, folate, and what the plant world calls phytonutrients, just say plant compounds that support the immune system. Dogs are not obligate carnivores like cats. They evolved alongside humans eating generalist diets. Their digestive systems are built for this. The last 5% is the part most people skip and shouldn't. A small amount of plain canned sardines in water, not in oil, not in sauce, just water. 1 to 2 sardines per meal for a medium dog. The omega-3 fatty acids in sardines, specifically EPA and DHA, are the single most powerful anti-inflammatory nutritional tool I know of that costs almost nothing. A Cornell study looking at dogs with chronic joint inflammation found that dietary omega-3 supplementation produced measurable improvements in mobility comparable to low-dose NSAID treatment without any of the gastrointestinal side effects. I've seen this in practice so many times, I stopped being surprised by it. Your dog's joints, his skin, his brain, they all run better on omega-3. And you can get a can of sardines and water for less than $1. If your dog is over 40 pounds, add 1 raw egg yolk 3 times a week. The biotin and B vitamins in egg yolk support coat health in a way that most synthetic vitamin supplements don't replicate. The white of the egg, raw, actually binds biotin and prevents absorption, so either cook the whole egg or just use the yolk raw. Either is fine. One thing I want to be completely clear about. This recipe, as described, does not contain sufficient calcium for long-term feeding unless you supplement it. If you're going to make this your dog's primary diet, not a supplement to kibble, but the whole diet, you need to add calcium. The simplest way is finely ground eggshell, dried and powdered, half a teaspoon per pound of food. That's free if you're already cooking eggs at home. The alternative is a plain calcium carbonate supplement, which you can find at any pharmacy. Talk to your vet about the right amount for your dog's size and age before making this a permanent switch, particularly for puppies and pregnant or nursing dogs. Now, I want to come back to something I said a moment ago, because I think it bears repeating with the plainness it deserves. The companies selling you a $35 bag of kibble are not your partner in your dog's health. They are not funding the research to understand whether their product is contributing to the cancer epidemic in American dogs. They are funding the marketing to make you feel like they are. There is a difference, and it is worth being angry about. I spent the better part of my career recommending products I now believe shorten the lives of dogs I genuinely loved. I'm not going to soften that. I'm telling you because you deserve the truth more than I deserve to feel comfortable. The transition, if you decide to make it, should be gradual. Swap 25% of the kibble for this recipe in the first week. 50% in the second week, 75 in the third, full transition by week 4. This gives the gut microbiome, the community of bacteria in the digestive tract, time to adjust. A sudden full switch can cause loose stool even when the new food is objectively better, simply because the digestive system has adapted to processing the old food. Don't be discouraged by a few days of soft stool during transition. It passes. What you will start to notice, if my 38 years of watching this happen is worth anything to you, is this. In the first 2 weeks, energy, dogs that were sleeping more than seemed right start moving more. In weeks 3 and 4, coat, the dull, dry, slightly dandruffy coat starts to change texture. The fur gets heavier, softer, the way a dog's coat should feel. By week 6 to 8, the chronic stuff, the itching that the vet told you was environmental allergies and treated with Apoquel at $80 a month, the ear infections that kept coming back, the soft stool that never quite firmed up, these things in a substantial number of dogs improve or resolve entirely when you remove the inflammatory inputs from the diet. Not in every dog. Every animal is an individual, and some conditions have causes beyond nutrition. But enough dogs, often enough, that I have watched grown adults cry with relief in a veterinary parking lot. And I've been in enough of those parking lots to know that moment when someone realizes their dog isn't declining, their dog was just hungry for something real. That moment is worth every conversation I've had that the industry would have preferred. I didn't have. If your dog means as much to you as mine meant to me, subscribe and stay with me. I put out a new video every single day. I have 38 years of things they didn't teach in vet school, things the industry has been hoping you'd never hear, and I've only just begun to say them.